A little girl who hadn't spoken a single word in months found a bleeding German shepherd, chained and pregnant, in the middle of a thunderstorm. What she did next, it left everyone speechless. And what happened after that will stay with you forever. This powerful story of empathy, healing, and the bond between a child and a dog will move you to tears. If this touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. It started on a suffocating July afternoon in Pineville, a town where the hum of cicadas and the drone of lawnmowers were usually the loudest sounds you'd hear. But today, a storm had been building all morning, pressing against the town like a fist. Somewhere on the edge of this restlessness, 6-year-old Ellie Dawson stood by her window, eyes wide and unblinking, peering into the woods behind her house as thunder rolled in the distance. Ellie had not spoken a word in 6 months, not since the night her father had died. Grief had drawn her into silence, and even now, as the world outside trembled with the promise of rain, her mouth formed no sounds, but she listened to everything. The scurrying of squirrels in the brush, the wind sighing against the glass, her mother's voice as it faded down the driveway on her way to the late shift at the diner. Then, a new sound. Thin, desperate, a whimper pitched so high it vibrated in Ellie's chest. It wasn't human, but something about it was pleading in a way she'd never heard before. She pressed her ear to the window pane, thunder crackling overhead. There it was again, sharp, ragged, impossible to ignore. Without a second thought, Ellie slipped her feet into her father's old rain boots, far too big, but the only ones by the door. She grabbed her yellow raincoat from the hook, but didn't bother with the buttons. She moved quietly, careful not to disturb the sleeping dog her mother sometimes looked after for neighbors. Out the back door, into the wild scent of ozone and mud, she went. The sky had turned a deep, churning gray. Rain started to spit as Ellie crossed the unmown lawn and stepped into the first line of trees. The whimper was louder now, more urgent, like a heartbeat she could feel under her skin. Branches snatched at her coat. She tripped once, landing hard on her knees, but she kept going, ignoring the sting. Her bare arms grew slick with rain. Somewhere a bird screeched, startled by the coming storm. Deeper into the woods, the sound grew sharper, until it was less a cry and more a strangled gasp. Ellie felt the earth under her toes turn cold and soft, mud sucking at her boots. She stumbled into a small clearing just as a bolt of lightning cracked the sky, illuminating a scene so shocking she froze mid-breath. Half buried beneath a tangle of roots and black plastic was a German shepherd, her fur matted with dirt and blood, ribs jutting like broken fence slats, the dog's eyes, enormous and terrified, locked with Ellie's. Around her neck was a thick metal chain, its end bolted to a post driven deep into the earth. The animal was breathing in short, frantic pants. Her belly, swollen and trembling, told Ellie everything. She was pregnant and dying. The next crack of thunder jolted Ellie back to herself. The whimper was now a hollow rasp, barely there. She dropped to her knees beside the dog, heedless of mud and blood. Her small fingers dug at the roots and clods of earth, trying to free the animal's side. Rain hammered down, making everything slippery and raw. The dog didn't fight. She only watched Ellie, trembling but somehow trusting. At that moment, Ellie's mother, Laura, pulled into the driveway after a 12-hour shift. She stepped out into the downpour, calling for her daughter out of habit. But Ellie didn't answer. Panic gripped Laura's heart. She dashed inside, checking the usual spots. Under the bed, behind the kitchen door, in the bathroom. Nothing. Lightning flashed again, illuminating a single muddy footprint leading from the back porch toward the woods. Laura felt her stomach drop. She ran, screaming Ellie's name, voice cracking with fear. The woods swallowed her up, branches tearing at her arms as she stumbled through the thickening rain. Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, she heard something, a low, urgent moan, and beneath it, the faintest sound of digging. Laura followed it, her heart thundering in her chest. She burst into the clearing and nearly collapsed at the sight. Ellie, soaked to the bone, was on her knees, clawing at the earth beside a chained, bleeding German shepherd. For a split second, Laura's mind spun. Was this a nightmare? A hallucination conjured by exhaustion? "Ellie!" she screamed, voice barely audible over the pounding rain. But her daughter didn't move, didn't even flinch. Instead, she kept digging, face set in a determination Laura hadn't seen since before her husband died. Tears mixed with rain streaked Ellie's cheeks, but she refused to stop. Laura's instincts took over. She grabbed a fallen branch and smashed at the chain's lock, her hands slick with rain and mud. The metal wouldn't budge. The dog whimpered, pressing her nose into Ellie's palm. Thunder shook the ground, and Laura thought she heard something give, a snap of metal, or maybe just her own heart breaking at the sight of her child, so small and fierce. Desperation fueled Laura. She dug her fingers into the dirt, finding the padlock and wrenching it with all her strength. Her nails broke, blood mingled with rain. The chain finally gave way with a horrible metallic shriek. Ellie slid her arms under the dog's belly, lifting as gently as she could. The animal whimpered in pain but didn't bite, didn't snap, just looked at Ellie with an expression that was almost pleading. Laura tore her jacket off and wrapped it around the dog, trying to keep her warm as the storm built to a roar. The world shrank to the three of them, child, mother, and dying dog, huddled in the rain and mud. "Come on, sweetheart. Help me," Laura gasped, lifting the animal's back legs while Ellie held her head. Together they staggered through the woods, branches whipping their faces, the storm screaming above them. Every step was agony, but neither mother nor daughter dared to stop. The house glowed faintly ahead, its windows promising safety, but it felt impossibly far away. Ellie never let go, not even when her arms shook from exhaustion, or when the dog slumped, nearly lifeless, against her. She clung on, eyes fixed forward, as if sheer willpower could hold the creature to life. And as they crossed the yard, thunder fading behind them, Laura realized that for the first time since her husband's death, Ellie wasn't running from something. She was running toward hope. By the time they reached the porch, all three were soaked and shaking, but something electric thrummed between them, something fierce, desperate, and alive. Ellie looked up at her mother, eyes shining with silent promise. She would not move until they saved this dog. And Laura, heartbreaking and swelling all at once, nodded. "Okay, Ellie, we save her, whatever it takes." The storm raged on, but inside that small house a new kind of heartbeat began to thunder. Laura Dawson's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, her heart slamming against her ribs with every mile she put between the diner and home. The rain still lashed down, making the road a shimmering blur, and the only thing louder than the windshield wipers was the echo of her own panic. The thought that Ellie was gone, really gone this time, burned through every rational thought she could muster. When Laura finally burst through the door and found her daughter's boots missing, her scream almost matched the thunder outside. She barely remembered grabbing her coat or the flashlight. She didn't even notice she'd left her phone behind. The only thing guiding her was a primal instinct, something as fierce and old as motherhood itself. Out back, the woods were thick with mist, every branch flickering with ghostly shapes. every shadow hiding some new terror. Laura yelled for Ellie over and over, her voice breaking on the wind. It was only when a streak of lightning revealed a small figure hunched near the roots of an ancient oak that Laura's world narrowed to a single point. There was Ellie, barefoot, soaked, hands coated in mud, digging desperately at the earth. Next to her, chained to a half-buried stake, was a German shepherd. The dog's fur was patchy and filthy, her sides heaving with shallow, rattling breaths. She was so thin that every rib showed, and a cruel chain dug into her neck, rusty and slick with blood. Ellie didn't look up, didn't even flinch as her mother ran to her. "Ellie, baby, please!" Laura dropped to her knees, feeling the mud seep through her jeans. The air stank of metal and fear and something sweetly rotten. She tried to pull her daughter away, but Ellie jerked from her grasp with a strength Laura didn't know she had. The little girl's fingers kept digging, scraping desperately at the sodden ground. Her gaze locked on the dog's face. A low, guttural whimper escaped the shepherd, half pain and half plea. She was visibly pregnant, her belly swollen, legs trembling. A small pool of blood soaked the earth beneath her. Laura fumbled for the chain, cursing under her breath as her numb hands slipped. Hold on, girl. We're going to get you out," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ellie, utterly silent, pressed her tiny hands to the dog's shivering side. Her eyes were wide and wild, her lips moving in frantic, soundless pleas. Thunder cracked, and the rain became a sheet, nearly blinding them both. Laura finally found the rusted padlock and snapped it with a rock, her knuckles splitting open, the pain a distant memory. Together they dragged the dog from the pit, mud sucking at their feet. Laura tore off her own raincoat and wrapped it around the shepherd as best she could. "We have to get her inside now," she gasped, but the animal's legs buckled. The shepherd collapsed, tongue lolling, and Laura saw a slash along her flank that was bleeding badly. "Ellie, sweetheart, help me," Laura pleaded, her voice shaking. Ellie didn't speak, but she didn't need to. She grabbed the end of the coat and pulled, her face twisted with determination. Inch by inch, together, they hauled the dog toward the house, slipping and stumbling through mud and brambles. Rainwater stung Laura's eyes, and every so often she glanced down to make sure Ellie was still beside her, still holding on. Inside, the kitchen became a frantic, chaotic triage. Laura yanked open drawers, searching for anything. Towels, sheets, even the good ones she usually hid away for guests. She wrapped the dog, now shivering and whimpering in pain, and laid her on the faded linoleum floor. Blood stained everything. Ellie hovered beside her, never taking her hand from the shepherd's side. Lightning flickered outside, and the house felt impossibly small, walls closing in around their crisis. Laura fumbled for her phone and dialed Dr. Chen, the only veterinarian she trusted in Pineville. She could barely make herself understood over her own tears. "Please, you have to come. There's a dog. She's pregnant. She's hurt. Please." The call ended with a promise and a slam of a car door in the distance. In those endless minutes waiting for help, Laura did what little she could. She dabbed at the shepherd's wounds with wet towels, murmured meaningless comforts, and tried to ignore the ugly suspicion twisting in her gut. Who could have done this? Who would chain a pregnant animal in the woods and leave her to die? Ellie's eyes never left the dog. As Laura tried to coax her to sit, to rest, to at least speak, the girl only shook her head, silent and stubborn as ever. The only time she moved was to fetch a battered old bedsheet from the hall closet, which she insisted on draping over the shepherd's trembling body. When Laura gently touched her shoulder, Ellie whispered, almost soundlessly, "Luna." It was the first word Laura had heard from her daughter since her father's funeral. Her heart leapt, but she didn't dare break the moment. Luna. Okay, baby. That's her name now. Dr. Chen arrived, soaked and breathless, her arms full of supplies. She knelt immediately beside the dog, her practiced hands moving over Luna's body, checking wounds, pulse, breath. She's in labor, Dr. Chen said, her voice grim, and she's not going to make it without help. What followed was a blur of towels and gloves, urgent instructions, the sharp tang of antiseptic. Laura held Luna's head, murmuring to her, while Ellie sat at her flank, fingers splayed wide. Outside, the storm beat against the windows, as if the whole world were holding its breath. The first puppy came quickly, but Laura could tell something was wrong. It was small, still, slick with blood and silence. Dr. Chen's face went pale as she tried to clear its airway, massaging its tiny chest. Nothing. A shudder racked Luna's body, a sound like a sob. Ellie leaned close, her face crumpling. For a long, terrifying second, it felt as though time itself stopped, until Ellie pressed her lips to the puppy's head and whispered, "Please live." The words were barely audible, but they were enough. Suddenly, the puppy convulsed, a tiny gasp escaping its lips. Dr. Chen grinned in disbelief. "She did it. He's breathing. Look, Ellie. He's breathing." Laura sobbed, clutching her daughter. In the next hour, 6 more puppies arrived, wet, squirming, and very much alive. Each one a miracle, each one a battle. Ellie, still pale, still silent, except for soft, urgent whispers, kept vigil beside Luna, refusing to leave her side. As dawn began to break and the storm moved on, Laura realized with awe that her daughter, her silent, broken child, was speaking again. Quietly, tentatively, but the dam had broken. In the glow of that morning, with Luna's puppies tucked against their mother, hope stirred in the house for the first time in months. Ellie's hand lingered on Luna's side. She looked up at her mother and, with a voice trembling but real, whispered, "She's safe now." For the first time in what felt like forever, Laura believed her. The storm passed, leaving behind a town washed in silver dawn and exhaustion. For a while, time seemed to move differently in the Dawson house. It was as if the world beyond the rain-streaked windows had melted away, leaving just Laura, Ellie, Luna, and 6 squirming bundles of new life on the kitchen floor. Luna, the battered German shepherd, lay curled protectively around her puppies, her sides still trembling with exhaustion. The raw pink wound on her flank was cleaned and stitched, thanks to Dr. Chen's gentle hands and quiet efficiency. There were a few tense hours, but Luna survived, and so did every one of her newborns. The only evidence of the harrowing night was the deep fatigue etched into everyone's faces, and the lingering feeling that nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. Ellie was different too. In the days following Luna's rescue, she spoke little, but she spoke. Small things at first. One-word answers, a whisper of water or hungry, or the softest pleas when she wanted to sit closer to Luna. But her silence no longer felt empty. It was full of listening, full of purpose. Every day after school, Ellie sat by Luna's side, cradling the smallest of the puppies in her lap. She named them all: Max, Daisy, Shadow, Poppy, Bean, and Sunny. She pressed her ear to Luna's chest, listening so intently that Laura sometimes wondered if Ellie could hear things that others couldn't. Sometimes she would whisper nonsense to the puppies, telling them secrets in a language only she and Luna seemed to understand. It didn't take long for Laura to notice the drawings. Ellie had always liked to draw. Before her father's death, the fridge was covered in her rainbow sketches. But these were different. The first time Laura found one, It was slipped under her bedroom door in the middle of the night. A picture of Luna, caged behind black bars, her eyes wide and terrified, wires snaking from her head. There were no colors, only dark pencil strokes that seemed to shudder across the page. Laura stared at the drawing, unease prickling at the base of her neck. She asked Ellie gently, "Did you see this in a dream, honey?" Ellie just shrugged, eyes dropping to her shoes. But the next day, there was another picture. Luna, surrounded by men in uniforms, their faces hidden by black masks, glowing red lights shining from their chests, and another, Luna running through darkness, chased by monstrous shapes that could have been men or machines. Laura kept the drawings in a folder she hid in her closet, unsure what to do. Was this just the trauma of finding Luna in the woods, leaking into Ellie's dreams? Or was there something more? Every night, she watched her daughter sleeping with Luna, the big dog pressed close, Ellie's small arm draped over her neck, and tried not to imagine what memories flickered behind those closed eyelids. One afternoon, Laura found Ellie in the sunroom, sketchbook open in her lap. The golden light caught dust motes dancing in the air. Laura settled beside her and smoothed Ellie's hair, tucking a wild curl behind her ear. "Where do you see these things, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Ellie didn't answer right away. She was working on a new drawing, her tongue peeking out in concentration. After a long pause, she finally whispered, "She didn't come from the woods." Laura frowned. "What do you mean?" Ellie's voice was so soft, Laura almost missed it. "She escaped something worse." Laura's blood ran cold. She tried to press gently. "Did Luna tell you that?" Ellie nodded, serious as a judge, and returned to her drawing. Laura shivered, not from the cold, but from the strange certainty in her daughter's voice. Ellie grew more attached to Luna and the puppies every day. She refused to sleep in her own bed, insisting on curling up on a pile of blankets beside Luna's crate. At night, Laura would tiptoe to check on them and find Ellie's ear pressed to Luna's side, her face peaceful, her hand rising and falling with Luna's breath. Sometimes Ellie would whisper, so soft it was almost prayer, "I'm listening for the quiet heart." Laura never asked what that meant. The town was curious about the Dawsons' new addition. Word spread quickly. How could it not, in a place like Pineville? Neighbors brought over cans of dog food, old towels, and offers to help. Most meant well, but a few looked at Luna with wary eyes, whispering about strange things in the woods. Laura tried to brush it off, but she noticed the way Luna tensed whenever an unfamiliar car pulled into the driveway, how her ears would flatten and her eyes would follow the shadows beyond the fence. Dr. Chen visited almost daily, checking on Luna and the puppies. She grew fond of Ellie, always bringing her new colored pencils or books about dogs. One evening, as Laura washed dishes and listened to the murmur of voices from the living room, she heard Ellie telling Dr. Chen about the quiet heart. "She says it's different than the other hearts," Ellie whispered. "It's smaller, but it's not afraid. It's waiting." Dr. Chen met Laura's gaze over Ellie's head, her expression troubled. "Kids sometimes sense things adults miss," she said quietly, packing away her medical bag. "And sometimes dogs do too." A week passed. The days grew brighter, the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming honeysuckle and the steady sound of puppies nursing. But Laura couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something unfinished lurking just beyond the safety of her home. She caught herself double-checking the locks, glancing over her shoulder as she brought in groceries, jumping at the sound of a car door slamming down the street. One night, as rain tapped against the windows and thunder grumbled in the distance, Laura found Ellie standing by Luna's crate, staring down at the sleeping dog. "She's dreaming," Ellie murmured, "but not about the woods." Laura knelt beside her. "What is she dreaming about?" Ellie looked up, eyes dark and shining in the gloom. Cages, lights, a place where she was supposed to forget. Laura gathered Ellie into her arms, holding her close as the storm built outside. For a long time, neither of them spoke. There were too many questions and too few answers. But as the night wore on and Luna's breathing steadied, Laura made a silent promise. Whatever darkness Luna had escaped, whatever shadows haunted her daughter's dreams, she would face them. For Luna, for Ellie, for the fragile peace they'd all fought so hard to reclaim. For nearly a week, life in the Dawson house settled into an uneasy rhythm. Luna's wounds healed slowly but steadily, the stitches holding, her fur already beginning to grow back in places. Ellie remained a quiet shadow beside her, always listening, always drawing, always vigilant. Laura, for all her newfound hope, could not quite shake the sense of something ominous hovering just out of sight, like the last low rumble of thunder after a storm that refuses to leave. On a cloudless Thursday, Laura was folding laundry in the living room when the knock came, a firm, deliberate rapping at the front door that made her jump. It was too early for the mailman, too late for the meter reader, and the rhythm was neither polite nor impatient. Laura's heart leaped into her throat. Ellie was in the kitchen, drawing quietly at the table with Luna sprawled nearby. The puppies were sleeping in a sunbeam, barely more than a pile of soft whimpers and twitching paws. The knock came again, harder this time. Laura opened the door just a crack, peering through the gap. On the porch stood a man in a dark uniform, black slacks, crisp shirt, the kind of cut you'd expect on a government agent or someone who wanted to be mistaken for one. His badge hung from a chain around his neck, glinting in the sunlight. His eyes, cool and unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses, flicked from Laura to the living room behind her and back again. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, his tone as smooth as glass, but with an undertone that felt like a threat. "I'm Special Agent Cross, Department of Homeland Security. I need to speak with you about a dog, possibly a German Shepherd, recently found on your property." He pulled a sheaf of official-looking papers from a leather folder, holding them out just far enough that Laura had to open the door wider. The air in the room changed. Laura's fingers tightened on the doorknob. "We found her chained in the woods. She was hurt. We called the vet. She's not—" She stopped, realizing she didn't know what to say, what to admit, or how much to trust this man. Agent Cross gave a practiced smile. "We're not here to cause trouble, Mrs. Dawson. The animal in question is part of a missing government K-9 program. She's valuable property, and it's critical for national security that we locate her immediately. Could you let me see her?" Something about his words, property, critical, national security, made Laura's skin crawl. But she stepped aside, letting him into the small living room, her instincts torn between fear and politeness. As Agent Cross entered, his gaze swept the space with clinical efficiency. He spotted Luna immediately. Luna, who had barely lifted her head for days, suddenly bristled. A low, warning growl bubbled up from her chest, the first sound of aggression since she had been rescued. Ellie, sensing danger, darted beneath the table, clutching her sketchbook tight against her chest. Her eyes locked on the stranger. Agent Cross knelt in front of Luna, careful to keep his hands visible. "Easy, girl," he murmured. But Luna's hackles stayed up, her growl a rumble that made Laura's stomach twist. Cross looked up at Laura, almost amused. "She remembers things, doesn't she? Trauma does that. Dr. Chen, summoned by a frantic text from Laura the moment the agent arrived, appeared at the door just then, carrying her worn medical bag. She took one look at Cross, then at Luna, and immediately set her jaw. "May I help you, sir?" she asked, cool but polite. Cross stood up, offering the papers to Dr. Chen as well. "We believe this animal was stolen from a federal research facility. She should have a microchip under the skin here." He indicated the space between Luna's shoulders. "If you'll permit me, I'd like to scan her." Dr. Chen exchanged a look with Laura, then knelt beside Luna, her hands slow and gentle. She produced a scanner from her bag and passed it over Luna's neck. A series of beeps, then a long, low tone. Dr. Chen's brow furrowed as she read the numbers on the display. "This isn't standard police issue," she said, voice measured but hard. "These codes are military. Classified, in fact. Why would a K-9 from a government surveillance program be out here in the woods, chained up and half-starved?" Agent Cross's expression never changed. "I'm afraid that's not information I can share, but it's imperative you surrender the animal to my custody for security reasons." Laura's fear finally crystallized into anger. "You want to take her back to wherever she escaped from, after what was done to her?" Agent Cross folded the papers neatly, sliding them back into his folder. "I assure you, ma'am, everything will be handled appropriately. The animal isn't safe in a civilian home. These protocols exist for a reason." Luna's growl grew louder, vibrating through the floorboards. Ellie, trembling, crawled out from beneath the table and pressed herself against Luna's side, her small arms locking around the dog's neck. "She's not yours," Ellie whispered fiercely, her voice shaking but clear. Agent Cross hesitated just a second, his mask slipping enough for Laura to see a flicker of irritation. "Ma'am, I'll be back with the proper paperwork. In the meantime, please do not attempt to move or hide the animal. That would constitute interference with a federal investigation, and I'd hate for things to get complicated." He turned and walked out, his footsteps as precise as a metronome. The door closed behind him, and the tension in the room finally broke. Laura sank to her knees beside Ellie and Luna, her hands shaking. Dr. Chen set the scanner down, her voice low and urgent. "That man isn't here for rescue, Laura. He's here to reclaim something he thinks he owns. And that microchip, those codes, I've never seen anything like it." Laura hugged Ellie tightly, heart pounding. Luna pressed between them. "We're not letting them take her," she said, her voice steady even as her mind raced with fear. Outside, a black government sedan rolled away, its windows reflecting only the clouds and the empty road behind. But Laura knew this was only the beginning. The threat was real, and it was closing in. That night, as Ellie lay curled against Luna's side, she whispered, "I won't let them hurt you again." She pressed her ear to Luna's chest, listening for that quiet, steady heart. But sleep would not come. Not for Ellie, not for Laura, not for anyone who had ever tried to protect what the world said was not theirs to keep. And in the darkness, Laura understood. This was more than just a lost dog or a broken family. This was a fight for something bigger, a heartbeat, a choice, a promise that some things are worth risking everything to protect. The moment Agent Cross left the Dawson house, unease settled in Laura's chest like a stone. He'd taken nothing, except the feeling of safety that had barely started to grow roots. His official papers, left on the kitchen table, felt heavier than their thinness suggested. As soon as the door closed behind him, Luna whimpered, turning her head to the window, her eyes dark and watchful. Ellie clung to Luna's neck, not uttering a word until Cross's black sedan vanished down the street. Laura barely slept that night. Her mind replayed every word Cross had said, every glance, every hint of knowledge about Luna that she herself didn't possess. At 3 a.m, with the house silent except for the soft breathing of sleeping dogs and her daughter, Laura picked up her phone and called someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Hal Garrett, the retired investigative reporter who'd once been a fixture at Pineville's local paper before downsizing pushed him out. "Hal, it's Laura Dawson. I need your help," she whispered. She explained about Luna, the agent, the sense that something far bigger was at play than a missing police dog. Hal listened, voice gravelly and wary, but as soon as Laura described the microchip Dr. Chen had discovered, one encoded with military software, he promised to come by in the morning. True to his word, Hal showed up at sunrise with a thermos of black coffee, a laptop, and his old reporter's satchel stuffed with files. He listened carefully as Laura recounted everything, then asked for the papers Cross had left. As Hal scanned them, his eyes narrowed. "There's something off about these," he muttered. "They look real, but the agency names are all wrong. Some are from branches that don't even exist anymore. Classic misdirection." He asked to see Luna. She watched him approach, wary but not aggressive, allowing Hal to kneel nearby. "She's got scars on her paws, see? And this here?" He gently lifted Luna's left ear, showing a tiny tattooed serial number barely visible beneath the fur. "That's not police and not standard for military working dogs either. This is specialized." Dr. Chen arrived as Hal powered up his laptop. She brought the microchip scanner, glancing nervously at the window. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding, Luna," she whispered, stroking the dog's head. The scanner beeped. Instead of a standard pet ID, a string of codes scrolled across the screen. Project Halcyon, Phase 3, Subject L7, Status Unstable, Terminated. Hal let out a low whistle. "Project Halcyon," he said, turning the laptop so Laura could see. "This was a black-budget project I tried to write about a decade ago. Never got close. All I heard was rumors. Genetically enhanced animals for surveillance, maybe even warfare. Nobody would talk, and those who did went silent real quick." Dr. Chen's face was grim. Enhanced how? Hal scrolled through leaked files, some with redacted lines, others riddled with government jargon. There was a brief. Said these dogs weren't just bred for strength or intelligence. They were engineered for emotional detection, trained to sense fear, anger, even lies, like living lie detectors. Except, he trailed off, pointing to a blurry photo. A young German shepherd in a cage, eyes shining unnaturally bright in the camera flash. Ellie, who had been drawing quietly at the table, slid her latest picture to Hal. It was Luna, just like the photo on his screen. Behind bars, wires snaking from her head, her eyes huge and haunted. "She saw this," Ellie whispered, not quite meeting anyone's eyes. Laura felt the room spin. "How did you—" Ellie shook her head, clutching her pencil. She didn't want to remember, but the puppies help her sleep. Dr. Chen laid a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. "It's okay. You're helping her now." Hal found a note in the files marked Phase 3, Unstable Subjects. The line about Luna read, "Exhibited excessive empathy. Broke from command protocol after becoming pregnant. Subject deemed unsuitable. Ordered for termination. Missing as of—" The date was 2 months ago, the same week Laura and Ellie had found her. Hal looked up. They wanted her to be a weapon, but she chose to be a mother. A heavy silence filled the room. Laura's hands shook as she folded the files shut. "So they'll come back. They don't care about her safety, just about keeping this a secret." Outside, a police cruiser rolled slowly down the street. No siren, just the steady sweep of its lights. Laura's stomach twisted, thinking of Agent Cross's veiled threats, the way he'd mentioned child services almost casually. Dr. Chen shook her head. "We're not alone in this. I know a few people, rescue networks, animal rights groups. If they try to take Luna, we can make noise. But we have to be careful." Ellie, meanwhile, had started a new drawing. This time, she sketched Luna lying on her side, puppies nestled against her, but there was something different. In Luna's swollen belly, Ellie drew not 6, but 7 tiny forms, one darker, tucked away from the others, glowing faintly. Laura stared at the picture, a chill crawling up her spine. "Ellie, honey, why are there 7? Luna only had 6 puppies." Ellie met her gaze, her voice clear and certain for the first time all day. "There's another. She's waiting. She's the quiet heart." Hal leaned closer, frowning. "Kids sometimes see things grown-ups can't. Maybe this one's special." Laura hugged Ellie, wishing she could believe this was just a child's imagination. But nothing felt normal anymore. She caught Dr. Chen's worried glance, and even Hal, who'd seen more than his share of weird stories, looked unsettled. Later, when the house grew quiet and Ellie and Luna slept together in their nest of blankets, Laura paced the kitchen, reviewing everything they'd learned. Project Halcyon. Military dogs trained for emotional warfare. A mother dog deemed too empathetic to be controlled. And her daughter, somehow linked to Luna's memories. Her drawings pointing to something no one else could see. In the darkness, Laura made a silent vow. She would protect Ellie and Luna, no matter what came next, and somewhere in the house, the 7th heartbeat waited, faint but unbroken, for its chance to be heard. Laura barely slept for 2 nights after Hal's revelations. Every time headlights swept the street outside, or a phone rang, her nerves jumped. The folder of Project Halcyon documents was buried beneath a loose board in her closet, as if distance alone could keep danger at bay. But fear was everywhere, etched in Luna's haunted eyes, in the way Ellie startled at sudden noises, in Laura's own heart, as she tried to plan the impossible. How do you protect your child, 6 helpless puppies, and a dog the government would rather erase than explain? It didn't take long for the threat to return. It was Saturday morning. Laura was rinsing mugs when she saw the black sedan idling at the curb. Agent Cross back again, but this time not alone. 2 men in matching dark uniforms stepped out with him, hands hovering near their belts. The scene felt rehearsed, like the start of a bad dream Laura had lived too many times already. She barely had time to call Dr. Chen and Officer Ramirez, a friend from town, one of the few she trusted absolutely, before the trio was at her door. Cross didn't knock, he banged. Laura's hands trembled as she opened up, Luna at her heel and Ellie clutching the back of her shirt. Cross held out a folder. "Mrs. Dawson, you are now in possession of classified government property and are harboring evidence in an ongoing federal investigation. If you do not immediately surrender the animal known as Luna, I am authorized to call Child Protective Services on grounds of endangerment and obstruction." One of the other men, his face unreadable, scanned the living room. "We can search the premises if you resist." Laura felt the last threads of patience snap. "You have no warrant, and you know it. She's not a piece of equipment. She's a living creature, and you're terrifying my child." Cross's tone chilled. "Then maybe you'd prefer to discuss your daughter's safety down at the station, or perhaps with a social worker. I have no wish to escalate, but the clock is ticking." Luna growled, a low, primal warning. Ellie wedged herself between Luna and the men, arms wide, as if her tiny body could shield her friend. Laura's voice shook. but it was fierce. "You're not taking her, and you're not taking Ellie either. Not until you explain exactly what you did to that dog." Cross's face hardened. "Last chance, Mrs. Dawson." At that moment, Dr. Chen and Officer Ramirez arrived, breathless but determined. Ramirez stepped between Cross and Laura, hand resting on his belt. "I need to see your paperwork and speak with your superior now. Until then, you're not going anywhere near this family." Cross hesitated. He knew, everyone in the room knew, that the standoff couldn't last forever. His gaze was cold as he backed away. "We'll be back, with or without the local law." The door slammed shut behind them, leaving the Dawsons, Dr. Chen, and Ramirez in a house that suddenly felt very small. Ramirez spoke first, his voice gentle but urgent. "They're going to get what they want. We need to move, tonight." Laura's head spun. "Where would we go? We can't just run. Ellie, the puppies." "We have a network," Dr. Chen said quietly. "A sanctuary, off the grid. Animals who've been through things like this. You'll be safe. At least for now." Ellie hugged Luna, who pressed close, seeking comfort in the little girl's touch. Laura stared at her daughter, her heart aching with pride and terror. "Ellie, sweetheart, do you understand what's happening?" Ellie looked up, her voice trembling but sure. "They want to hurt her. I won't let them." That night, under the cover of darkness, Laura packed essentials: food, water, Ellie's drawings, a faded photo of her late husband, and the files Hal had helped her collect. Dr. Chen arrived with a battered station wagon, her trunk filled with medical supplies and blankets. Officer Ramirez watched the street, his cruiser parked at the corner in silent solidarity. Moving Luna and the puppies was an exercise in whispered instructions and pounding hearts. Ellie bundled the puppies in a laundry basket, shushing them as they squeaked in protest. Luna moved slowly, but she didn't resist. Laura could tell the dog knew, on some deep animal level, that this was the only chance. As they pulled out of the driveway, Laura looked back at her home, a silhouette against the faint glow of streetlights, forever changed. She felt the ache of loss, but also the flutter of hope, like the first warm wind before a storm breaks. The journey was tense. Ramirez drove ahead to check for patrols, reporting via burner phone to Dr. Chen at every crossroads. They avoided the highways, sticking to old farm roads lined with trees heavy with summer leaves. The puppies, at first restless, soon settled into sleep, their tiny chests rising and falling in unison. Luna rested her head on Ellie's lap, her breath steady, her eyes closing as if she could finally relax for a moment. Halfway to the sanctuary, parked on the shoulder in the deep woods, Ellie drew a new picture by flashlight. She handed it to Laura without a word. The drawing showed Luna curled around her puppies, but off to one side was a small, glowing figure, another puppy, shining with a light that seemed to radiate right off the page. It looked different from the rest, eyes wide, surrounded by a faint aura, half in shadow and half in light. Laura stared at the drawing, then at Ellie. "Is this another puppy?" Ellie nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "She's still hiding, but she's close." Laura's arms tightened around her daughter. "We're almost there, honey. Just a little farther." As dawn approached, the battered wagon rolled into the sanctuary, a rambling old farmhouse deep in the woods, its fields overgrown but alive with movement. Dogs of every size and breed appeared at the windows and gates, some limping, some with scars, all with watchful eyes. Dr. Chen explained quietly, "Every animal here is a survivor, of labs, fighting rings, places like where Luna came from. No one here asks questions, and no one will let her be taken." They settled Luna and the puppies in a quiet room lined with old quilts. Ellie refused to leave Luna's side. She pressed her ear to Luna's side, eyes closed, whispering, "I hear her, Mama. She's not afraid. She's just waiting." Laura stroked her daughter's hair, a fierce gratitude blossoming inside her for everyone who had helped them. Dr. Chen, Ramirez, even Hal, working in the background to bury their digital trail. In the hush before sunrise, for the first time in days, Laura let herself hope they could rest. But as Ellie drifted off, one arm curled around Luna's neck, Laura couldn't stop thinking about that last drawing. The glowing puppy, hidden yet present, a seventh heartbeat waiting to be found. They were fugitives now, not from justice, but from a system that cared more about secrets than life. As the new day crept in, Laura made herself a promise. Whatever came next, she would fight for Luna, for Ellie, and for the hidden miracle they were only beginning to understand. The forest felt different at night. Trees loomed like silent sentinels over the narrow, rutted back road as Dr. Chen's station wagon bounced along, headlights slicing through the darkness. Laura sat in the passenger seat, clutching the folder of files to her chest, glancing back every few seconds at Ellie, Luna, and the laundry basket full of puppies huddled together under blankets. Officer Ramirez followed at a distance in his cruiser, ready to shield them if any trouble appeared on the lonely road. They drove for almost 2 hours, leaving Pineville and its heavy shadows behind. As the sky began to lighten, Dr. Chen finally turned off the main highway and wound down a gravel track that led deep into the trees. At the end was an old hunting cabin, half hidden by overgrown brush, its porch sagging but sturdy, windows aglow with the promise of warmth and safety. Laura carried the puppies inside while Ellie and Luna followed, the German shepherd moving with a careful, measured limp. The cabin smelled of cedar and dust, but the beds were freshly made, and there was food waiting on the stove. It wasn't home, but it was shelter. The sun had barely crested the horizon when exhaustion set in. Ramirez, after one last check outside, pulled the curtains shut and settled into a chair with his service weapon on his lap. Dr. Chen set up a makeshift clinic on the kitchen table, checking Luna and the puppies for any sign of distress. Laura busied herself boiling water and making tea, her hands trembling as she tried to process everything that had happened. They were fugitives now, on the run not from the law, but from something colder and more relentless. Ellie, though, seemed almost peaceful. She sat quietly with Luna and the puppies, her eyes never leaving her canine friend. Occasionally, she would reach out and press her palm against Luna's side, lips moving in a silent conversation only she understood. The peace didn't last long. Just before noon, as a gentle rain began to patter against the roof, Luna started to shiver violently. She whimpered, curling around the puppies as if trying to shield them from an invisible threat. Dr. Chen rushed to her side, running gentle hands over her body. "She's not running a fever," she murmured, but her heart beats, strange, almost doubled. "Laura, can you bring me the ultrasound?" Laura handed it over, her mind racing with dread. Dr. Chen scanned Luna's belly, frowning at the screen. "All 6 puppies accounted for. Heartbeats are strong. I don't understand." Suddenly, Ellie bolted upright. "She's hiding one." Everyone froze. Laura stared at her daughter. "What do you mean, honey?" Ellie pointed at Luna's side, her eyes wide. "There's another one. She's scared. She won't come out until she knows it's safe." Dr. Chen shook her head gently, scanning again. "Sweetheart, I only see 6. But Ellie pressed her hand flat against Luna's ribs, brow furrowed in concentration. "She's not like the others. She's different. She doesn't want to be found by the men in black. She's hiding in the dark." Laura and Dr. Chen exchanged a worried glance. unsure what to say. Ramirez hovered nearby, tension in his posture. But Luna's shivering grew worse, her breath coming in ragged pants. The puppies, sensing their mother's distress, squeaked and squirmed. Laura knelt beside Ellie. "Can you show me where, sweetheart?" Ellie nodded. She waited until the lights were off, then whispered, "Dim the lamp. She doesn't like bright lights." The cabin fell into gentle shadow. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming on the roof like a heartbeat. Then, something strange happened. Under Luna's ribs, a soft ripple moved, like a tiny pulse just beneath the skin, barely visible unless you were looking for it. Laura reached out, fingers trembling, and felt the warmth of life thumping beneath her palm. Ellie leaned close, whispering into Luna's ear. "Come on, little light," she breathed, her voice as gentle as a prayer. "It's safe now. You can come out." A long moment passed. Then, with a sudden shuddering effort, Luna convulsed. Dr. Chen moved quickly, guiding her through the labor as Luna whimpered and strained. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation. Ellie clung to her mother's arm, eyes shining with hope and fear. At last, a tiny, glistening form slipped into the world. A puppy, smaller than the others, its fur pale silver, its eyes squeezed shut. But as Dr. Chen cleared its airway and rubbed it with a towel, a faint glow pulsed from its chest, casting gentle patterns on the walls. The room went silent, everyone watching in awe as the puppy opened its eyes that glimmered with an otherworldly light. The little creature's heartbeat was soft but clear, and every time it breathed, soft patterns of colored light danced in the air above it, like a miniature aurora. Ellie smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Her name is Nova," she whispered. "She's the map. She'll show us the way." For a long time, no one spoke. Dr. Chen stared at Nova, her scientific mind trying to make sense of what she saw. Ramirez, usually unshakable, sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Even Laura, who had faced grief, loss, and fear in the last year, could only stare in wonder. Luna licked Nova clean, her eyes soft and full of relief. The other puppies huddled close, sensing something miraculous in their midst. Nova, tiny and perfect, nestled against Luna's belly and projected faint three-dimensional shapes into the air, glowing lines that wove together and pointed, always, to the north. Dr. Chen reached for her stethoscope, then stopped, realizing it was unnecessary. She could see the truth with her own eyes. Nova was no ordinary dog. She was the culmination of everything Project Halcyon had tried and failed to create. Not a weapon, but a beacon. Laura felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a sense of hope she hadn't allowed herself in months. She hugged Ellie, who looked up with shining eyes. "She's the quiet heart, Mom. She's the one Luna was listening for. She's why we had to run." Ramirez finally found his voice. "If they find out about this, about Nova..." Laura shook her head. "They won't. We'll protect her, all of them." Outside, the rain slowed. In the dim light of the cabin, surrounded by friends, family, and a miracle, Laura realized they weren't just running anymore. They were fighting for something bigger, a future no one could have imagined. And in the gentle glow of Nova's heartbeat, hope bloomed again. Thunder rippled on the horizon as the forest seemed to hold its breath. In the little hunting cabin, for a few fleeting hours, the world had been reduced to quiet awe. The seventh puppy, Nova, as Ellie had named her, was a miracle in miniature, her silvery coat shimmering in the lantern glow, her eyes swirling with a light no one could explain. Even the air around her seemed to hum with gentle music as she snuggled close to Luna, her faint heartbeat beating in time with Ellie's outstretched hand. But peace was never meant to last. Dusk brought the return of fear, a sound, distant at first, then unmistakable, cut through the stillness, the crunch of tires over gravel, then car doors slamming shut. Laura froze, blood turning to ice. Ramirez peeked through a slit in the curtains. "They found us," he muttered, his voice grim. Blue and red lights pulsed against the trees. Federal vehicles, not local. There were more men than before, their shapes dark and purposeful against the last light of day. Dr. Chen swept Nova and the other puppies into a blanket-lined box. Luna stood over them, teeth bared, her body tense as a drawn bow. Ellie clung to Nova, whispering reassurances, her own body trembling. Laura tried to steady her hands as she gathered their few belongings, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. Ramirez moved to the door, weapon drawn but not raised. "We don't have much time. There's a back path through the woods. I scouted it this morning. If we're fast and quiet, we can lose them. I'll draw their attention at the front." His eyes found Laura's, a silent promise in his steady gaze. A voice echoed through a megaphone. "This is Agent Cross with Homeland Security. The property is surrounded. Surrender the animals and the girl. You have 30 seconds before we enter." Ellie's eyes widened in panic, but Laura knelt to meet her gaze. "Listen to me. We're not running away. We're running toward what's right, just like you said." She pressed a kiss to Ellie's forehead, then scooped Nova into her jacket. Luna nuzzled Ellie's hand, as if to promise she'd protect her with her life. With a deep breath, Dr. Chen led Laura and Ellie through a side door, boots silent on the soft earth. The woods swallowed them whole, the sounds of pursuit close behind. Shots rang out in the distance. Warning shots, Laura hoped, and Luna stiffened but pressed forward, her body low and purposeful. Ellie didn't cry. She clung to Luna's scruff, eyes on the glowing bundle in her mother's arms. Suddenly, there were voices behind them, shouts, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Laura's lungs burned with the effort of running, heart raw with terror. A stick snapped. A man in black loomed ahead. He raised a weapon, shouting, "Stop! Don't move!" Luna leapt between Laura and the agent, barking furiously. And then something extraordinary happened. From the darkness behind Luna, a pack of phantom wolves appeared, their forms rippling and translucent, eyes blazing with ethereal fire. The agent stumbled back, tripping over a root, dropping his flashlight as the phantom wolves snarled and circled. Ramirez appeared behind them, panting. "Keep going! Follow the lights!" At first, Laura didn't understand. Then Ellie held up Nova. The tiny puppy opened her eyes, and a soft, glowing pattern shimmered into the air. A luminous, winding path through the woods, lighting the way forward like a trail of fireflies. It seemed impossible, but Laura trusted it, pushing on as branches whipped at her face and fear clawed at her throat. Behind them, the real world fell away, replaced by glowing paw prints and the howling of Luna's phantom pack. Dr. Chen shielded the box of puppies, running close behind, as the family plunged deeper into the wild, following Nova's living map. For a moment, Laura faltered, overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were doing. They were fugitives, yes, but not from justice, from injustice, from a world that couldn't accept the miraculous or the different, that saw empathy as a threat. Guilt squeezed her chest. What if they were wrong? What if they doomed Luna and Nova to a life of hiding, of fear? She paused in the clearing, breathless. Ellie tugged her hand, fierce and clear-eyed. "We're not running from. We're running toward what's right." Those words gave Laura strength she hadn't known she possessed. She scooped up Ellie, tucking Nova safely between them, and pushed on. Luna pressed close, her eyes locked on Ellie, as if drawing courage from the little girl's steady faith. The lights and shouting faded behind them. The woods became deep and still, their only guide the golden footprints shimmering before them. Nova's gift, leading them toward freedom. At last, the trees opened onto a hidden road. Ramirez flagged them down, waving frantically. Dr. Chen emerged, cradling the puppies, tears streaming down her face in relief. Laura glanced back at the forest, heart pounding. "We made it," she whispered. For the first time, she let herself believe it. Ellie pressed her face into Luna's fur. "Thank you," she murmured. Luna licked her cheek, her tail wagging weakly. Nova nestled between them, her tiny heart thumping in harmony with theirs, a living miracle, born of fear, love, and hope. They loaded the car and sped away, breathless but whole. As the road unwound behind them and Pineville faded into memory, Laura understood at last. They hadn't just saved Luna or her puppies. They'd chosen to protect what the world feared most: compassion, empathy, the seventh heartbeat. They were no longer just a family on the run. They were a family running toward something new, something bright, something that might just change everything. Dawn found the fugitives at the edge of an old sanctuary nestled deep in the woods, far from the roads, deeper still from the reach of government eyes. The journey through the night had left everyone exhausted, scraped, and shivering. But as the first golden rays pierced the leafy canopy, Laura felt a fragile peace begin to settle over her heart. The sanctuary wasn't what Laura expected. It was a sprawling, time-worn farm ringed by dense trees and brambles, a world away from the sharp fluorescence and steel of laboratories or government offices. Rambling fences encircled overgrown pastures, and a patchwork barn leaned stubbornly against the wind. Yet, there was an energy to this place, something that felt quietly sacred, a haven built on trust and healing. They were met at the gate by Mara, a broad-shouldered woman with a gentle smile, and Sam, a wiry old man who moved with surprising speed. They knew Dr. Chen by name and took in Luna and the puppies with practiced, careful hands. Mara's eyes lingered a moment on Nova, who blinked up at her with glowing, unafraid eyes. "You brought a miracle, didn't you?" she murmured, voice half prayer, half marvel. Inside the sanctuary, dogs of all kinds filled the space, some scarred, some limping, some with haunted eyes that brightened when Luna and her family entered. These were survivors, rescued from fighting rings, labs, illegal breeding. Some huddled close to humans, others only trusted their own. The place thrummed with low, hopeful energy, a gentle hum of beings learning to heal together. For the first time in weeks, Laura felt her shoulders relax. She watched as Luna, Ellie, and the puppies were settled into a hay-filled stall at the back of the barn, draped in quilts and warmed by heat lamps. Nova curled into Luna's belly, her heartbeat pulsing light across the straw, the glow soothing the other puppies to sleep. Ellie, her hair tangled and eyes rimmed with exhaustion, didn't rest. She knelt beside Luna, whispering encouragement, promising her they were safe. She drew pictures for the other animals, each page a small gift, a bridge for the wounded to cross toward hope. As days passed, the story of Luna and Nova spread through the sanctuary, drawing quiet awe from volunteers and other rescued dogs alike. It was a place where secrets could be set down, and Ellie began to open up. She spoke to Mara and Sam, to Dr. Chen and Laura, not just words, but stories, ideas, and dreams. Her voice, once locked in silence, grew stronger every day, carrying purpose born from pain and hope. Dr. Chen sat with Laura on the porch one afternoon, both women watching Ellie play with Nova in the grass. "She's different," Dr. Chen said softly. "Not just the puppy, your daughter. What she did for Luna, the way she listens, the way she heals. It's rare. Maybe it's what those scientists were chasing, but you can't manufacture empathy. It's grown, shared." Laura nodded, feeling the truth of it settle deep in her chest. All they ever saw was a tool, a weapon. Luna was meant to obey, to hunt, to hurt. But when she chose her puppies, she chose a different path. That's the part they could never control. Over the next few days, Laura learned the stories of the sanctuary's other residents. A Rottweiler missing an ear, but gentle as a cloud. A three-legged collie who guided blind puppies around the yard. Dogs who bore physical scars and emotional wounds, but who were learning, slowly, to trust again. Some had been engineered for aggression, others for endurance or speed. But here no one measured them by their usefulness. They were simply allowed to be. Ellie, for her part, became a bridge among the animals. She helped train the younger dogs, learning from Mara and Sam how to coax shy creatures from hiding, how to show patience to the ones still haunted by the world outside. With Nova at her side, Ellie found confidence and joy she hadn't known since before her father's death. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Dr. Chen called everyone into the barn. She'd been running tests on Luna and Nova, her scientific curiosity matched only by her sense of wonder. "I think I understand now," she told the small gathering. "When Luna was pregnant, something happened. An evolutionary leap maybe, or just an act of love so strong it rewrote everything they thought they could engineer. Luna isn't just a product of Project Halcyon anymore. She's something new. Nova is proof of that." Nova, at that moment, padded forward and sat beside Ellie, projecting a swirl of luminous patterns into the air. Images that seemed to tell stories of freedom, connection, belonging. The dogs in the barn watched in silence, as if understanding. Sam, the old caretaker, shook his head in awe. They wanted control, but love broke their chains. That's how you build a new world. Not with force, but with compassion. The lesson settled over everyone. What humans tried to create as a weapon, love had transformed into something else, something powerful and healing. The most advanced thing Luna could teach the world was not to fight, but to feel. Not to dominate, but to connect. Later, when the sanctuary was quiet and the dogs all settled in their nests, Laura hugged Ellie close and whispered, "I'm so proud of you. You brought us all here. You made this possible." Ellie smiled, her voice strong and certain. "Nova helped, Luna helped, and you did too." Outside, fireflies danced among the trees. Inside, Luna and her puppies slept together, safe at last, the steady glow of Nova's heartbeat shining gently in the darkness, a beacon of everything they'd gained and everything they could still become. In that sanctuary, with wounds still healing but hope finally blooming, Laura realized the world could be remade by small kindnesses, and that sometimes the quietest hearts changed the world the most. Months drifted by, each day woven with a gentle rhythm of healing and discovery. The sanctuary, once a haven for broken bodies and battered souls, grew into a home for new beginnings. Under the golden light of late autumn, the air was scented with dry grass and the sharp tang of wood smoke. For the Dawsons, and for Luna and her puppies, every morning offered a little more peace, a little more proof that safety and even joy could grow from the most fractured ground. The changes were small at first. Ellie no longer flinched at loud noises. She ran through the pastures with Nova at her side, her laughter ringing like bells through the crisp air. The 6 puppies, now robust and playful, found homes with other rescue families, But Nova stayed, a constant, gentle light in the sanctuary, her luminous eyes and unique gifts a source of wonder to everyone she met. Word of the miracle dog spread. At first, Laura worried, fearful that the wrong ears would hear, that Agent Cross and his superiors would one day darken their gate. But the sanctuary community closed ranks, protecting Luna and Nova with quiet resolve. They spread a new story, a mother dog rescued from cruelty, her puppies symbols of hope and resilience. What happened in those woods became legend, a fable whispered at shelters and rescue events, inspiring others to act, to care, to refuse to look away from suffering. For Ellie, every day brought new confidence. She became a bridge, not just between animals and people, but between old wounds and new possibilities. She taught other children how to listen, how to care for the dogs with patience and gentleness. Her voice, once lost to trauma, now rang with purpose and pride. It was on a crisp November afternoon that Ellie was invited to speak at the annual Voices for the Voiceless rescue event, a gathering of animal lovers, foster families, and advocates from all over the state. The main barn was swept clean and strung with fairy lights, hay bales arranged for seating. People packed the space, some with tears in their eyes, as stories of rescued dogs and second chances filled the air. Ellie stood at the front, a little nervous, Luna and Nova flanking her. Laura stood behind, hands trembling with pride. Dr. Chen and Ramirez were there too, faces shining with anticipation. Nova rested in Ellie's arms, a glowing beacon of calm. Luna sat with quiet dignity, eyes wise and watchful. When Ellie spoke, her voice was steady and clear. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. They called her broken, but she healed me. They wanted her to obey. She chose to love. She paused, looking down at Nova, then at the audience. Sometimes the world wants to tell you who you're supposed to be. Sometimes it wants to use you for something you're not meant for. Luna, she taught me that it's okay to fight for who you love, that real strength is in kindness, not in force, that even when you're scared, you can still be brave, that compassion doesn't hide, it shines. You just have to stop looking away. There was silence, deep and trembling. Then, one by one, hands rose in applause, a tidal wave of cheers that swept through the barn. Tears glistened on cheeks. Children hugged their parents. Volunteers held their foster dogs close. Laura felt her own tears fall, her chest aching with pride and gratitude. Luna rested her head on Ellie's knee, tail wagging gently, as if she understood every word. After the applause faded, Ellie finished, her words soft but resolute. If you see someone hurting or afraid or lost, don't turn away. Stop, listen. Help if you can. Sometimes all it takes is a gentle hand, or an open heart, or a quiet voice that refuses to give up. With those words, the barn seemed to glow with a shared warmth, a promise that what happened here would ripple outward, touching lives the Dawsons would never know. As the event ended, Nova pressed close to Ellie, projecting a single glowing paw print onto the wooden stage, a luminous mark that shone, refusing to fade, even as the lights dimmed and people drifted home. Outside, as the sun set and the sanctuary returned to its gentle hush, Laura walked with Ellie, Luna, and Nova across the moonlit pasture. For the first time in a long time, Laura felt whole. She understood that their story, her story, Ellie's, Luna's, wasn't just about running or hiding. It was about choosing hope again and again in a world that sometimes demanded silence. The government never stopped searching, but the truth had found its own voice, louder, clearer, and stronger than any secret. Nova's gift and Luna's courage had changed everything. As the Dawsons reached the edge of the pasture, Ellie turned back, watching as Nova's paw print glowed on the barn door, an eternal reminder that compassion, once ignited, never truly disappears. Ellie took her mother's hand. "Do you think someone else will hear us, Mama?" she asked. Laura smiled, eyes glistening. "Yes, honey. I think someone always does." If this story touched something deep inside you, hit that like button, share it, and follow. Because someone else out there is waiting to be heard. And as the family stepped forward into the shimmering light of a new tomorrow, the seventh heartbeat pulsed on, steady, luminous, and unbreakable.